So quite the bombshell was dropped today when Sony confirmed that they are not going to be attending E3 next year in 2019. This was crazy news. I mean, not only are they not going to be having a press conference, they're just straight up not going to the show. No floor space, no games, no previews, no hands-on events, no nothing. They're just basically out of there. Also, really quickly before I continue, apologies for not doing the actual face cam normal vid with myself on camera for you guys. Just kind of a pretty crazy, nutty, time crunchy kind of evening for myself, and you know, it usually is a little bit harder for me to get on camera when that's happening. I can do these kinds of gameplay format videos much faster, and it just works better for my schedule. So you're going to be watching probably some Gears of War online footage of myself playing, which, by the way, I love Gears of War 4, but I am not fantastic at it, so in case you're seeing me just suck to death, that's why. I usually don't do too well. So either way, hope you enjoy that. Sorry for not getting on camera, and yeah, let's keep talking about this Sony stuff. So yeah, as you could imagine, this is huge news, and I mean, so many people talking about this right now. A big shock, but in a lot of ways, it even kind of makes sense because, you know, not that long ago, Sony actually confirmed that they're not going to be holding a PlayStation Experience this year, which I think is the first time in the 4 or 5 years since they've been doing PlayStation Experience every December. They confirmed, hey, we're not going to be doing it. We have a lot of stuff we're working on, but we're not going to have enough to show, and we don't feel like it would be a justified experience for us to put on a PlayStation Experience, PSX, this year. We want to make sure that it's actually worthy. And so, you know, we're going to talk about stuff we're going to do next year once 2019 comes. So that happened. It was disappointing, a little bit surprising, but not quite the end of the world. However, when you look at what's happening with E3 and skipping that altogether, it's just a much, much bigger decision. Now, as you can imagine, I have a lot of feelings and a lot to say on this. I was actually very excited because I realized, oh man, what a topic this is going to make. I have thoughts. I got a lot of feelings and emotions about this. You know, some theories about how this relates to Nintendo's decisions over the past, stuff like that. So I'm excited to get into that, but before I do, let me actually read the official quote from Sony about this decision, the only official information that they've really given anyone in the media and the press and online and stuff, and also some reactions from Nintendo and Microsoft, which are also pretty interesting. But either way, here is what Sony officially has said about this so far. As the industry evolves, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to look for inventive opportunities to engage the community. PlayStation fans mean the world to us, and we always want to innovate, think differently, and experiment with new ways to delight gamers. As a result, we have decided not to participate in E3 2019. We are exploring new and familiar ways to engage our community in 2019, and can't wait to share our plans with you. So, pretty interesting, a very curious way to kind of phrase what they're doing. I guess in a lot of ways it's kind of straightforward. There's a couple of curious phrasings in here, though. I mean, one of the things I immediately go to is, you know, they say we like to think differently and experiment with new ways to delight gamers, and then immediately follow up with, as a result, we have decided not to participate in E3. It's like, that seems a little bit counterintuitive. I mean, not like E3 is the only way to delight gamers, don't get me wrong, but I think that making the statement of thinking of new ways to delight gamers and following that with, as a result of that, we decided not to participate, it just seems kind of, the juxtaposition is a little bit funny there. The other thing is, and I don't know if many people have noticed this, but they also say we are exploring new and familiar ways to engage our community. So both stuff that, you know, they've never done before and things that will feel very familiar that they have done before. So they're obviously looking at doing a lot of things differently, borrowing from things that they've done in the past or things that are maybe industry standards, I'm kind of thinking, as far as what they want to do going forward. Now, things get a little bit more fun and kind of cheeky and interesting when you look at how Nintendo and Microsoft have reacted to this, because they've both released some statements essentially like doubling down and confirming their commitment to coming to E3 and why they see E3 as important. I mean, this happened literally within the hour or two after this became confirmed that Sony wasn't going to be showing up. So here is Nintendo's statement. This came from Reggie himself, the man. I love me some Reggie. And this is his statement about Nintendo's approach to E3. He says, E3 is an outstanding opportunity for us to share new games and experiences with fans and business partners from across the globe. Every year, we discuss what will be the best way for us to take advantage of the next E3 show in order to bring smiles to people's faces. I mean, that's awesome. Very, very glad to hear Reggie and Nintendo talk about how much they do love E3. They do love attending the show, and even though as we know, Nintendo many years ago decided to leave the press conference stage, like the live presentation stage, they still have been coming every year and bringing games and doing directs and showcases and doing, you know, live on the floor demos of their games, I should say. And it's interesting that he says every year we discuss what'll be the best way for us to take advantage of E3 next year. I mean, that shows that they really don't seem to have any intention of leaving E3 soon. So that's definitely good news for E3 the show and for fans of E3. Now on Twitter, the official E3 Twitter account actually tweeted in response to this as well. They say this: looking forward to the innovation and excitement of E3 2019. Read more about the upcoming show. And they, of course, post a link to their own article about what to expect. So they basically were essentially doing, you know, damage control, not like in a negative way damage control, but they wanted to make a response. Hey, E3 still matters. We're still here. Please be excited. Don't forget us. You know, Sony leaving isn't going to stop the show. Here's all this great stuff. So they're still trying to maintain that momentum. Then, very interestingly, Phil Spencer from Xbox, he essentially quote tweeted that, and then he says this: a lot to share with fans at E3 2019, always a high point of the year to witness the industry's creativity and the energy of the community. So clearly he's basically doubling down too, along with Xbox, saying, hey, yep, we're going to be there as well. Be excited for Microsoft's presence. Be excited for the Xbox brand. Sure, maybe Sony's leaving, but we are still coming. And then, of course, beyond that, the official Xbox account also tweeted very simply, we can't wait to see you all at E3 2019. So more doubling down and confirmation from Microsoft. Reggie and Nintendo did the same thing. The official E3 showrunners did the same thing. Everyone is basically saying, hey, E3 still matters. There's a lot going on. Nintendo's going to be there. Microsoft's going to be there. If you don't care about Sony, then who cares? Because we're bringing all this stuff. And so that kind of, you know, that's a good way to sort of summarize what's going on, to get caught up with the details, and kind of becomes a good segue for me to kind of talk about my overall thoughts on this. So essentially, when it comes to the idea of Sony not coming to E3 next year, I'm both definitely sad and disappointed, but at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily mad about it, and I don't think that it really speaks negatively to what Sony is doing right now, what their plans are, what their financial or their sales success status is right now. I'm sure everything is great on the Sony front right now. I'm sure that Sony is very happy with where they are with the PlayStation 4, and obviously they're preparing some big things for the future, probably the very near future, and they, I think, just feel really comfortable bypassing E3 altogether. And so I don't think this is like a huge to-do in the sense that, oh my god, Sony is in trouble, or Sony is doomed, or Sony hates the gamers and they just want to not care, or they think they're so far ahead that they don't need to put the effort in. Not at all. I don't believe any of that. I love Sony. I love the PlayStation brand. I'm very excited for the future for Sony. And so I don't think it's a negative thing. I think that they just have a very calculated business reason for not going. But like I said, I am still disappointed only in the sense that I love E3, obviously a huge fan of gaming and the industry and the hobby and all this stuff, and I cover it here on Rule of Two Review. And so I love just the traditional three-way showdown of Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft fighting for attention and fighting for our gaming dollar and just throwing all these great games at us every year at E3. It is the showdown. It is the battle arena for this. And so in a perfect world, you want all three bringing their A game every year and trying to wow us. And we're going to be missing 1/3 of this huge E3 pie. And so just as a fan and as a gamer, that part, it just makes me kind of sad. And so naturally, this brings us to the why. Why would Sony really be doing this? And I think that there are a few reasons. I'm going to talk about one of the main reasons that's probably going to be somehow the title of this video to a degree. And it has to do with Nintendo. I think that what we're looking at is one of the first major ripple effects of Nintendo's then very bold decision in 2013, 5 freaking years ago, you guys, to not have a live press conference at E3. They didn't leave the show completely. Like I said, they still attended at E3 in 2013, and they've attended every year since, and they've been doing the direct presentations and the pre-recorded and edited presentations that have gone through a variety of different names over the years. And they've also been on the show floor, and they've brought a lot of games, and they've had a big presence at the show. But again, remember, back in 2013, when they said, hey, we're not going to do a live press conference, but we'll be there in some way, look forward to details, everyone was shocked, and a lot of people were very nervous. I mean, 2013 E3, that was less than a year after the Wii U launched. That was 6 months into the Wii U's life, you guys. The Wii U was still very new. It still had, as far as we knew, a long life ahead of it. The fate of the console could have gone either way. It could have been a moderate success, a complete failure, or a huge success. I mean, at that time, anything was possible, so it felt so strange and kind of nerve-wracking for Nintendo to just not have a conference. But as we all know, when we fast forward to today, a couple of years later, at this point, it's become such a standard for Nintendo, and they've set such an excellent precedence with the usual pretty high quality of how they deliver their E3 content and presentations, that it's just kind of an accepted known fact that this is what Nintendo does. It very much works for them. It's also very understood that it's saving them money. They get to control their message in a very specific way. Yes, they still fight for gaming attention at E3, but they don't necessarily rely on it the same way Sony and Microsoft do. And that's also coupled with the fact that, as we all know, Nintendo sprinkles Nintendo Directs throughout the year as well. So Nintendo has this awesome, brilliant stranglehold on gamers' attention 365 days of the year, 12 months a year, 52 weeks a year, the whole time. Everyone is waiting for Nintendo to give us something new, and it just really kind of peaks at E3. You know, it's like from January to E3, it's just a buildup of hype and excitement, and, you know, small directs get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then we get the big E3 blowout, and then we just get a steady stream of content and directs throughout the rest of the year. And that's how they do it. And one would have to think that Sony's decision this year, or I should say next year for 2019, has to partly be inspired by how Nintendo has done this and how they have succeeded at it. I think that what Sony has seen is, hey, Sony doesn't necessarily want to like copy Nintendo outright. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do and start doing PlayStation Directs and not do E3 stuff and just do things exactly like Nintendo. But what they probably have seen is, wow, look at what Nintendo did. They disrupted the E3 and the game presentation and the live press conference business strategy by doing their Nintendo Directs and their E3 Direct presentations. And it's been awesome for them. They do it so well. They see success. They sell the Switch like crazy. Their games sell like crazy, and their fans love them for it. It's just perfect. And there's no doubt in my mind that Sony is either partly or hugely influenced by Nintendo's success at what they did by making the first bold decision as one of the only 3 console manufacturers to change their approach to E3. To be fair, what Sony is doing next year, for one, it could be a one-off. This could be the only time Sony ever does this. Also, it's a much larger step. Nintendo said, hey, we're just not doing a live press conference, but we're still coming to E3. And as I just read earlier in the video, they're still doubling down on that. Sony is not only not doing the live press conference, they're just not coming at all. They're just like, bye-bye E3, we'll see you later. And so, I don't know. I feel like this is showing that Nintendo has been successful. They have been disruptive. They've shown a different way to reach the gamer and control your messaging to the gamer, and I think Sony is very much trying to borrow that idea. Of course, the other huge reason that Sony might be deciding to do this, like I said, this could be a one-off. I think we have to remember this. This isn't necessarily, you know, Sony setting the precedence that they're going to do this every year or change what they do for E3 every year. This could just be a one-off because they need 2019 to be structured in a very specific way. And so that leads us to the other thing that they might be doing. A lot of people are talking about this. They could be preparing for the PlayStation 5. Obviously, this could happen in a couple of ways. They could be preparing to straight up reveal the PlayStation 5. They could be preparing to launch the PlayStation 5 in 2019. Maybe they reveal it early in the year and they launch it at the end of the year. Maybe they reveal it at the end of the year and launch it at the beginning of the following year in 2020. Very similar to how Nintendo revealed the Switch. They revealed the Switch in October 2016. And 5 or 6 months later, in March 2017, the Switch actually came out. Maybe they want to do something like that. Maybe they're not going to do any of, like, reveal of the console, but maybe they're going to confirm it. And they want to take different periods throughout the year to talk about some of their big games that will be coming on the PlayStation 5 with them to confirm or show the system, you know, next year in 2020, something like that. I mean, we have to remember, let's look at their E3 presentation this year. Their 2018 E3 was weird. Now, I didn't hate it as much as most people did because most people thought it was just complete garbage. And I get it because it was weird. I didn't hate it simply because I loved the games and I loved what they showed of the games because they showed a lot of gameplay of some of the biggest exclusive, huge, incredible looking games. Ghost of Tsushima, and they even revealed Resident Evil 2 Remake, which isn't exclusive. Of course, Death Stranding, the Spider-Man thing was there, Last of Us 2, oh my god. So they did a bunch of stuff, and it was essentially like a weird melding of a Nintendo Direct and also a live press conference. It was this weird, like, halfway in between. And I feel like they might want to do something similar in 2019, and maybe they're just going to spread it out throughout the year. Maybe what they're going to do is, in Q1, they're going to do a 30-minute Nintendo Direct-style presentation just on Ghost of Tsushima. And then in Q2, they'll do the same thing just on Death Stranding. And so on for Last of Us 2, and, I mean, Days Gone is coming out earlier in the year, so that's that. And maybe reveals for new games. Maybe they do sort of do something like that. And for that reason, they're like, we don't want to come to E3 because we're only showing a couple of games throughout the year in this way. And imagine if they do that with the pretense that they confirm, hey, PlayStation 5 is coming next year in 2020, or PlayStation 5 is coming at the end of the year this year in November. And so let's take a look at some of our biggest games that are going to launch the PlayStation 5 periodically throughout 2019. And that's what they do with some of those big games. I mean, I am literally spitballing my random ideas kind of as they're coming at me and kind of based on how I've been thinking about this the last couple of hours. But it's just one example of why I could see Sony deciding to take such a huge step in totally bypassing E3. And so what does this ultimately mean? Well, I think it means probably three things. One, I think it means Sony is still going to be fine. I don't think this is spelling any sort of negative headlines or press or any negative scenarios for Sony whatsoever. I think that they are calm and comfortable with this decision, and they're making a calculated business decision to not do this for reasons that they're probably going to explain early into the year in 2019. So we're going to get the understanding of why, and I think that it's going to all make sense, and I don't think Sony is in any kind of trouble. It also means that very likely the PlayStation 5 is somewhere in our near future, whether it's discussed, whether it's confirmed, whether it's revealed, whether it releases, whatever's happening, the PlayStation 5 is coming soon. So the next generation is going to kick off in the next, I don't know, year to year and a half, probably. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think about. The other thing it means is at this point, E3 is kind of open season for Sony and Microsoft. I mean, the E3 like showrunners have confirmed, like Ubisoft and EA and Activision. Everyone else is still coming. This is really just a Sony only decision right now. But when it comes to E3 2019, it's all Nintendo, it's all Microsoft, baby, and I'm kind of excited for that. It's weirdly like, I'm weirdly sad about the lack of Sony and the lack of three-way showdown, but I'm also excited to see what Nintendo and Microsoft do to potentially capitalize on this. I mean, maybe they don't do anything, or maybe they really like extra step up their game now knowing that Sony isn't going to be there. Because remember, Sony is the market leader. Sony is the one that both Microsoft and Nintendo probably have in their sights. So they might see this as like an opening. Like Sony is kind of showing their weak spot. They're letting their guard down in a way, and maybe Nintendo and Microsoft want to jump in there and get that quick Kamehameha blast and just knock them out of the game out of nowhere, you know, and just use E3 as this like huge platform. So maybe, maybe not, but I feel like something really interesting is going to be happening at E3 without Sony there, like I truly do. So it's going to be fun to watch play out. I hope that Sony shows us some great stuff in 2019. I hope that Microsoft and Nintendo continue to bring it at E3 as well, in lieu of Sony not being there. And I guess we're going to have to see, man. So that is it for me, I think. Those are all of my thoughts on this topic. You know, like I said, I had a lot to say, a lot of feelings here. It's very interesting. This throws a huge ripple into what we were thinking was going to happen in gaming in 2019. So I don't know. It's going to be great. I'm thinking some of their biggest games that they've been showing are going to be launch titles for the PlayStation 5 or cross-gen releases for the PlayStation 5. Last of Us 2 for sure, I think. And I don't know. I guess we'll see once 2019 comes and once it plays out, man. That's only a couple of weeks away at this point. So what do you guys think about Sony's decision not to come to E3 next year? Do you think it's a big deal? Do you think it's not a big deal? Does it spell bad news for Sony? Does it mean nothing bad like I theorized? All this stuff. Talk about it below. That is it for me. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.